Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with FitFootU. Today I have Bryce. He is a media and healthcare business consultant. Welcome, Bryce. And I didn't want to butcher your name, so please tell me a little bit, first your name, your company, and then we'll dive right into it.
Hello, Dr. Pearl. Thank you very much for having me. So, my name is Bryce Agamemnon, and as you said, I'm a digital consultant for healthcare and media companies. And my company is Agamemnon Bros Brothers because I've got my brother working with me. And I'm so glad to be here today.
And you're across the pond, and I'm going to flip the script. The topic of the day is half healthcare burnout and half trying to get patients to sort of own up to what the problem it is, and it's a very delicate balancing act with the way society is. So I'm going to turn the interview baton over to you.
Yeah, of course. So, Dr. Pearl, I wanted to ask you obviously, you've got a lot of people coming to you every day that are coming from different walks of life. So, I was wondering what type of advice do you give them? What type of questions do you receive? I would love to just understand, do they all come for normal treatments? Do they come with different type of requests from you?
I don't think there is any normal in healthcare anymore. I think that post pandemic and the way the apex of insurance industry turning doctors into healthcare providers, so that literally we have to, either do the handoff, which is very disjointed, to our staff to let them know, oh, this is going to your deductible, this is to 20%. Why is my insurance not paying for this? Why are you offering me a treatment that you believe works but is not covered by my insurance? Those are all challenges that we face. And then the biggest challenge is just being real with the patient, being able to explain to them what their diagnosis is clearly. But then there's a certain part of that patient that just doesn't want to accept that things have changed over time. Their bodies aren't the same. And it's come to this proverbial straw that broke the camel's back.
Okay. So, are you saying that people don't realize that they need a reality check and you're the one kind of providing it? Is that what it is really?
Yeah. And that's a good way of putting it. So when I do the proverbial reality check and say, Mr. Smith, you've been eating Cheetos and ding dongs and Fruit Loops for just too long and washing it down with a liter of Coca-Cola. You haven't been doing your green leafies, your alpha omegas. You've been walking the dog, but you take the car a half mile to your office instead of walking, and this is where you're at. You're 140 pounds over your ideal body weight. That's a difficult conversation to have with a lot of people. And so you have
Yeah.
to dance lightly on that and just say, there are things you could do because of the pain in your knees and feet. I'm a foot doctor, right? That would be offloading. You could ride a bike. If you can't ride a bike because you're just not comfortable with your balance, you could swim. If you can't swim, you can water walk. So I almost feel sometimes like I'm in a boxing match where they say, oh, I don't have a pool access. Well, you could do this. So every time there's another barrier that the patient creates, I try to offer them another solution. But at
Yeah.
some point, you run out.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. And obviously this is a very sensitive conversation from the patient, but and you are doing the right thing to kind of explain to them black and white that they need to sort themselves out. It is within their response. It is their responsibility to do this. You can only kind of guide them in a way also to do that. And you are doing your job by doing that kind of things. But the question is, do they feel like that, or do they feel like you are not doing your job when you're saying this?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I look at it as kind of a healthcare triangle. There's maybe one third of the, and sometimes less, is what I offer as a solution. They're coming to me for expertise. I need to make the diagnosis and then clearly give them a pathway to get out of that conundrum that they came to see me for. Number two, though, and just as important on that triangle and the weighting of the triangle, is the patient themselves and owning up to their own responsibility. If they don't take responsibility and accountability, I can't help them. I can talk till the cows come home and I'm blue in the face, but if they don't execute the prescription because it just wasn't convenient for them to get to the CVS, if they don't follow up with the exercise prescription because it just wasn't convenient to get over to the high school track, or do a couple knee bends or squats in the morning, air squats in the morning, there's not much I can do with that. The third part of the triangle is the insurance game, the shell game. They make it sound to the patient like everything's covered, but it's not. And we know that. The patients don't understand that, though. We have to explain that. So now we're the bad guy because, number one, we told them what they really have. And number two, we pulled the curtain behind the Wizard of Oz to show that the insurance isn't going to pay for it, which they thought everything was going to be covered. So we're the villain times two. And then they got their own internal battles that their own internal demons that they're battling. That's the third part of the triangle. So we're already on the knockout punch. And the next thing you know, I get a Yelp review that says, "Oh, Dr. Pearl, all he did was try to sell me something in his office that wasn't covered by insurance because he didn't think that injecting with a corticosteroid injection was going to really solve the problem. He said it was just like getting a martini. Why is this guy talking about making jokes about alcohol?" So sometimes we'll use analogies, and that specific quote has never happened. But what I get all the time is all he wanted to do after I hand puppet the exercises to do, he never showed me the exercises, never touched my foot. How did I measure the equinus? How did I measure that you have a tight heel cord if I didn't touch it? Did I just come up with that? I'm not sure. Never showed me the exercises. So I show them. Sometimes I've had patients literally get up out of the chair because they're giving me the bum's rush because I went and another patient was vomiting in the other room because of an injection or something, and they got lightheaded, and I had to attend to that emergency. And I've had it, or less so. You went to ask your staff that because they asked about insurance benefits, you left the room, you left me unattended, you didn't hold my hand. I'm going to give you a Yelp review. So on the way out, I'll give them my YouTube and say, you can also check the exercise out, because they've already checked out early and they're just trying to pay their copay and move on to the next doctor. So, I've had those situations actually happen with healthcare providers even. I've had an ER doc, and people can find these reviews, but you got to take it with a grain of salt. People that are satisfied. They seldom write a review. They expect that to happen. And who's got the time to be writing reviews? But the people that want to do the high-tech lynching, they're going to get on that soapbox and give you a 1-star. So anyway, that's that aspect of it.
Definitely, yeah. And how often do you think that kind of
I have a patient, he won't write a Yelp review necessarily, but I would say 4 times a month, on average, once a week or not quite, I will have a patient that literally breaks down in tears because their goal was to do that 10K or that half marathon. And I'm explaining them the reality. And then they go, "Oh my God, the regenerative medicine is, $1,000. And yet they've spent, $2,000 for the package or $3,000 for the flight out to Mission Viejo to do the half marathon. But because it costs me X amount, let's say, $500 for the, as a non-covered service, and for our expertise, it's not unusual to be in the close to 800, 900 range. And sometimes you go to clinics where they're giving PRP for like 1,700 a pop, and you get several of those. So I try to give a procedure that we don't have to repeat repeatedly, and make it an indemnity plan for the doctor to keep rolling in, which some docs, that's the whole MO. Keep them coming. do slow bites, and then all of a sudden you're up to, 3-4 grand with that patient, but you did it in slower chunks.
Okay. So you still are trying to fit that within their budget and their different circumstances.
Yeah, and then you have another one, then an emergency diabetic wound that came in that you also have to attend to. So it's a juggling act. It's literally like sometimes you feel like you're as a healthcare provider, and it's not just podiatry, it's many providers. Internal medicine, they have to dive deep into renal parameters, all the different things, all the systems that they have to do comprehensively. And you're literally juggling a bowling ball, an egg, and a sword, with all these things. So it's tough act, and that's why we have physician burnout. Physician suicide rate is at an all-time high. I think in 2024, I think we had the largest number of self-inflicted almost deaths or attempts in history.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's because it's an unfair game. If you ever saw Moneyball, it's like, he talks about the Yankees have taken our kidneys. It's United has taken our kidneys. Aetna has taken our heart. Third-party carrier administrator has taken our lungs. So we're on our last legs. But who is the face of the frustration to come out from the patient? It's us.
Yeah.
And I've been on the other end with my son, but unlike me, who calls the patient after hours and then you get ghosted by the patient because they've moved on. I've had situations where my son had a complication. The doctor couldn't really identify anything. It was just, it didn't come up as a biomarker, and we got ghosted. It was like there was a two-word thing, go to neuromuscular. That's the next. No soft landing of a neuromuscular specialist, just go to neuromuscular. No call after the blood patch, the emergency blood patch, where I went to, at 3:00 in the morning, So sometimes the more involved and the more empathetic and the more you try with the patient, the worse it is. And I think what a lot of people do is they do the 80-20 rule. If 20%, 20% are costing you 80% of the time, they just sort of move on and cease communication. But you want to do it in a professional way. And I'm not saying you should do it. And also in a comprehensive way that you still did your job. And I'll try to even do it after the fact. We'll email them, hey, didn't get a chance because, you had to attend to your whatever it is, when really they just wanted to leave. They weren't happy with the interaction and they took it out on the provider.
You touched on something quite interesting there when you say the 20% is what gets you the 80%. So why do you feel...
that's a well-known sort of axiom in business. But I mean, it's not far off that number, really, of how, and I call the patients that don't want to participate the vampires. They suck the bone marrow out of the provider. So look at me, I got my 3-day growth. I got the crow line, I'm both, I've had, some issues that I've had with a family member that I've been researching, that sometimes I'll research at 2:00 in the morning, getting up from a sleep, having to use the restroom and then not being able to get. So rather than look at the ceiling, I say, well, let me connect some emails, or let me finish up something. I didn't finish up a chart that I didn't finish because I was just too exhausted. And I had to have a little bit of relief and do my 20-minute workout to do some, arm workout and do my bike commute back home, and then start again the next day.
And so the same way that you are doing your research late at night, do you feel like the patients are not doing this and they're expecting you to provide all that information?
They do use Dr. Google and Chat GPT. Did I get that acronym?
Yes.
Is it GPT? Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And so they'll use that, and that can give you a skeleton, but it's pulling from the web. So it might not be the latest and greatest. And it might be misweighted depending on, where the hierarchy is with what it's pulling from data-wise.
Do you think that could be part of the problem, that ChatGPT or Google is saying,
Yeah.
yes, this is what you're getting, this is what the solution would be. Then they come to you and you say something relatively different, and it just basically shared all their expectations?
Yeah, and it just kind of short circuits the whole interaction.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting.
I'll redirect. What would be three things? Because I know we're both wrapping up on our next adventure. What would be three things that you would recommend to the provider? And one of the things that I'm going to tell people is there are support networks of providers out there now about physician burnout. So you can shared stories, and a colleague of mine is writing a book about it. Shared stories in the healthcare trenches. It literally is. You're in battle trenches. It really feels like that. And there's a kinship amongst providers because it's like you got that 1,000-mile stare because we've all been there before, or most of us that don't have these boutique practices where somebody gets a blood panel and $2,000 later, and they're connected enough and they've arranged it such that they are able to get that type of clientele. But most of the people taking insurance as their bread and butter don't exist in that strata.
Yeah.
So what would be your top three things that you would suggest as messages, Bryce?
As messages? What do you mean as messages?
Solutions.
Oof. Top three solutions.
You're the consultant, so I'm looking to you as the healthcare consultant expert. Put you on the spot, but give me one or two that you think might be helpful. I like the idea of shared community just to manage and to try to group. What do they say when you crowdsource from other providers? So that's one thing that I've done out of necessity. Is what would you do in this situation? How would you have, handled that patient or handled that situation?
So I think the crowdsourcing is a good one. I think the other one is you've got so much in your brain that ChatGPT or Google doesn't have. So for me, it's just having that reliable resource library that patients could kind of go in themselves and learn a bit more about the conditions or what the real options are, because that would be easy for all the physicians if they have that somewhere, and that could be easily accessible for the patients, so you don't have to either repeat yourselves every single time.
I'm just going to interject. I won't take credit for this, but I have a colleague, Don Pelto, who does just that. He develops all these protocols for plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, and he literally has like a narrative. Sometimes he'll even insert a video, and he gives that to them on, let's say, an iPad after his initial consultation to diagnose the problem. The only thing that you run the risk of if you haven't established the bond like this, with the five senses, is that some patients will flip the script and say, he just wanted to toss an iPad at me and have me watch a video. The most impersonal doctor I've ever met in my life, 1 star. Don't go back.
But for me, I think this should
I'm
be...
saying it is a tool, and I'm not discounting it. It is a good tool.
Oh no, I completely understand. And for me, so the way that I would flip back to this is that should be handled before the patient come you. That's how you would qualify the patient. So if they're coming,
can you do that? Can you do that because you haven't seen them? They might say they have X, but it could really be Y. And then it's almost like a misdirect as a medical provider to get too specific before they come in. Unless you've diagnosed them the first time, know what the diagnosis is. Set the expectation that you're not going to be able to do everything at this visit, but give them 1 or 2 things they can start. And on the next visit, you're going to, on the take home, you're going to send them a full thing. So that you have the parachute on the back end. Yeah. So you could do it that way.
That could be an option. Yeah.
Or during the visit if it's appropriate.
If appropriate, yes. Yeah.
All right. So wrapping it up, what's your third thing that you think from this dynamic that could be done to make it easier both for physicians and patients? And you've been a patient yourself, so you could probably relate to a lot of these situations.
I have, yeah. Um, for me, the third one, and that's the thing that you touched on, is having that reality check, and ensuring that patients know the responsibility that they have, know that not everything will be covered by the insurance. It is just getting that from the get-go, so that when they come to you, they don't expect that, there you go, take that pill or take that treatment and everything's going to be fine. No. When it comes to what you guys do, there's always some sort of work that needs to be done, some sort of costs. Try to, get that already in their mind before they come in.
I love it. So let's wrap it up, Bryce. If people want to contact you, where shall they go? Where on the web, or how does one consult with your expertise?
Yeah, of course. So obviously they can find me on LinkedIn on Bryce Agamemnon. Otherwise, I've got my website, agamemnonbros.com, that we'll be able to put within the description. And that's it, really.
Okay. And what I'll do is they'll have the proper spelling on the title of this podcast. So that way they'll be able to access you. Thank you so much for doing this. Hope you're getting better weather than we have here at Spit and Rain. And hey, look forward to that podcast we're going to do tomorrow with former professional goalie Andrew Dykstra. We're going to talk about just that, the patient that has let themselves go just a little too long, and how do we get them back into the mainstream. I really appreciate the time you took. And until next time, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with FitFoot